The champagne flute was already in my hand when Mom leaned in close, her lips stretched into a picture-perfect smile for the cameras. Her breath was warm against my ear as she whispered, "You're just a leech." The flash from someone's phone lit up her face, making it look softer than her voice had sounded. On my other side, Dad clapped me on the shoulder like a proud father, but I felt his thumb slide slowly over the rim of my glass. He murmured something about how proud he was, his voice rich with false warmth. I didn't think much of it at the time, but later I'd learned that tiny motion had been anything but casual. I lifted the glass for another sip, forcing a smile as more people came over to congratulate me. But they weren't my people. Most were my parents' friends from church or Dad's business. People who didn't know me, didn't care, and barely tried to hide it. The whole thing felt like a stage play where I was just a prop, my degree, my cap, and gown all part of their set decoration. My real friends were scattered in the corner, looking a little out of place, holding paper plates and whispering to each other. Mom floated through the room like a hostess in a TV commercial, greeting her friends, talking about our big achievement. I heard her laugh with Mrs. Kane about how kids these days think a diploma will pay the bills. My smile stayed fixed, my cheeks aching, but my stomach gave a small twist. Maybe it was the nerves, I told myself. The drink in my hand tasted off, though, bitter at the back of my tongue, like something had gone wrong with the champagne. I tried to push the thought away, moving from group to group as people snapped photos, their flashes popping like little explosions. Every so often I'd catch my parents glancing at each other, their eyes darting toward me and back again, like they were checking a clock I couldn't see. It was strange, subtle, but strange. The party noise swelled, laughter bouncing off the walls, music blending into the clinking of glasses. Dad's friends shook my hand, congratulated me, and quickly moved on to find someone more interesting to talk to. My mouth was dry. I took another sip, the bitterness stronger this time. My stomach gave another sharp twist, almost like a warning. I caught sight of my best friend, Jamie, across the room. She raised her eyebrows at me, a silent "You okay?" I nodded, even though I didn't feel fine. My head was starting to feel light, the edges of the room fuzzing just a little. Mom appeared beside me again, sliding her arm around my shoulders for another picture. Her perfume was heavy, cloying, and beneath it I thought I caught the faintest whiff of something chemical from my glass. "You're glowing," she said sweetly, squeezing me tighter for the camera. I laughed, short and brittle, hoping she couldn't hear the edge in it. My parents thrived in moments like this, public, polished, admired. And me? I felt like I was standing in the center of their perfect little picture, but the frame was closing in. The photographer's flash went off again, white spots dancing in my vision. I blinked hard, trying to shake them away. The glass in my hand felt heavier. Somewhere deep in my gut, a quiet, cold thought started forming. Something was very, very wrong. I kept moving through the party, forcing myself to smile and talk. The music was too loud, the laughter too sharp, and the air felt heavy. I tried to focus on my friends, asking about their summer plan, but it was hard to keep my balance. My head felt light, almost like I'd stood up too fast, but it wouldn't go away. The edges of people's faces seemed softer, blurrier. "Are you okay, honey?" Mom's voice came from behind me. She was smiling, always smiling, even when her tone didn't match. "You're probably just overwhelmed. It's a big night. Have another sip, it'll help you relax." She lifted my glass toward my lips. I hesitated, but she held it there, eyes locked on mine, until I took a small drink. The taste was sharper now, almost metallic. I set the glass down on the nearest table, pretending I was done with it. My chest felt tight, and I could feel my pulse in my neck. That's when Mrs. Kane drifted over. She was a small woman with silver hair and the kind of polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She leaned in close, her perfume a strong wave of lilac. "Your parents have been talking about you all evening," she whispered, her tone low enough for only me to hear. "Saying you don't work, that you're planning to mooch forever. Lazy, I think the word was." She pulled back, tilting her head as if she'd just paid me a compliment. Then she walked away, leaving my ears ringing. I stood frozen for a moment, the words sinking in. It wasn't a surprise, they'd made similar digs before, but hearing it like this, at my own party, made something twist hard in my stomach. The nausea rose fast. I muttered something to a friend about needing a minute and headed for the hallway. My heels clicked against the floor, each step a little unsteady. By the time I reached the bathroom, my hands were trembling. I barely managed to shut the door before leaning over the sink, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. The room tilted. Then the wave hit, and I was on my knees in front of the toilet, emptying everything I'd eaten that. My throat burned, my eyes watered, and I could still taste that bitter tang from the drink. I stayed there, breathing hard, willing my stomach to settle. That's when I heard them. They were right outside the bathroom door, my parents. I recognized the low rumble of my dad's voice first. You didn't use enough, he muttered, his tone sharp. It was plenty, Mom hissed back. She's already showing signs. My breath caught in my throat. It's been an hour, Dad said, frustration edging his word. If we don't. Stop, Mom cut in. Someone will hear you. I clamped my hand over my mouth, my heart hammering so hard I was afraid they could hear it. The hallway fell quiet except for the distant hum of the party. I stayed completely still, not even daring to flush yet. Finally, their footsteps moved away, swallowed by the noise from the living room. I stayed crouched there for what felt like forever, my pulse loud in my ears. My skin was damp with sweat, my stomach still rolling. When I finally stood, my legs were weak. I gripped the sink again, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, my lipstick smudged, my eyes wide. My mind was racing, replaying their words over and over. They hadn't sounded worried about me. They'd sounded disappointed. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear my head. The party was still going on out there, people laughing and clinking glasses like nothing was wrong. But now, every sound felt far away, muffled. I dried my hands slowly, my fingers shaking so much the towel slipped twice. There was no way I could go back out there acting like everything was fine, but I couldn't hide in the bathroom forever either. I took one last deep breath, straightened my dress, and opened the door. The hallway looked exactly the same as before, but it didn't feel the same anymore. The light seemed harsher, the air colder. Somewhere inside me, a new, heavy awareness had settled in. Something was terribly wrong, and it wasn't going away. I can rewrite that last part in simpler, more direct English, so it's easy to read, but still keeps the tension and emotion. I walked into the hallway, trying to breathe slowly, but my body felt heavier with each step. My head hurt, and the lights above were too bright. Voices from the living room sounded far away, like I was underwater. Halfway down the hall, my legs gave out. I grabbed the wall, but my hands slid, and the floor tilted under me. I dropped to my knees, then to the floor. My chest felt tight, and my arms and legs were going cold. Someone said, "Rachel? Are you okay?" I tried to answer, but only a weak sound came out. My vision was blurry, and people around me were just moving shapes. A voice said, "Call 911. Mom's voice cut in fast. "No, she's fine. She's just overwhelmed. She does this when she gets too much attention." I wanted to shout that it wasn't true, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen to me. Dad's voice joined hers. "She's being dramatic. Just give her some air." "She collapsed," another voice argued. "She needs help." I heard someone using a phone while my parents argued with. My eyes closed on their own, and the world faded. When I woke up, I was on a stretcher. Bright lights passed above me. A beeping sound came from a machine near my head. A paramedic was talking into a radio. "You're going to be okay," he said, not looking at me. The hospital smelled sharp and clean. Nurses checked my blood pressure and asked questions. My parents came in looking shocked. "She was fine earlier," Mom told a nurse. "I don't understand what happened." Dad shook his head. "Someone must have slipped something into her drink. We didn't see anything." I looked at them but stayed quiet. I remembered what I had heard them say outside the bathroom. I knew it was them, but I had no proof. The nurse asked me if I had eaten or drunk anything unusual. I told her about the champagne and nothing else. Later, a doctor came in. "We found a small amount of ethylene glycol in your system," he said. "It's an antifreeze. It's poisonous, but you didn't drink a lot. You're lucky you came in when you did." Mom gasped and covered her mouth. Dad put an arm around her and said, "Who would do that to our daughter?" They acted like they were shocked and scared. If I didn't know them, I might have believed it. The doctor said I needed treatment right away and had to stay overnight. My parents stood near the door, whispering to each other. I lay in the bed, too weak to move. I could still feel the poison inside me. I knew exactly who gave it to me, and I knew they thought I couldn't prove it. I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling, but my mind wasn't on the room around me. It kept drifting backward, pulling me into memories I wished I could forget. For as long as I could remember, my parents liked being in control. Every dollar I had came with strings. When I was a teenager, I had a part-time job, but they made me give most of my paycheck to them for savings. I never saw that money again. When I wanted to buy clothes or books, I had to ask for permission, and even then, it turned into a lecture about how I was wasting their hard-earned money. When I got into college, they weren't happy. They didn't say it directly, but I could feel it. They told me I should just live at home and work for Dad instead. He owned a small company, and he said I could start at the bottom for minimum wage. I told him I wanted to build my own career, and from then on, things between us were tense. They found ways to make things harder for me. My car, which they had bought in their name, suddenly needed repairs I couldn't afford, so I had to take buses for hours to get to class. They told relatives I was too busy studying to work, even when I had 2 part-time jobs. They made it sound like I was lazy while also making sure I couldn't get ahead. One day during my second year, I came home to find a stack of envelopes missing from my desk. I'd left them there the night before. They were letters about scholarships I'd been approved for. When I asked, Mom said she hadn't seen them, but later I found them ripped in half at the bottom of the kitchen trash can. She didn't even bother to hide them under anything. There were smaller things too. They would forget to tell me about phone calls for job interviews until it was too late to call back. They told me I was wasting my time applying for internships because those are for kids with connections. They'd take any chance to remind me how much they had paid for my tuition, like I was running up a bill I could never pay back. When I finally moved out during my last year of school, they acted like I had betrayed them. They said I thought I was too good for the family. I tried to keep a little distance, but they would show up uninvited at my apartment, bringing food or gifts that I didn't ask for, then use it as proof I was still dependent on them. Looking back now, it all seemed connected. The money, the control, the way they spoke about me when they thought I couldn't hear. It wasn't just bad parenting. It was a pattern. They wanted me under their thumb forever. They wanted me to need them so badly that I could never leave. And when I started to prove I could live without them, when I was weeks away from graduating with my own plans for the future, that's when they decided to go further. I could see it clearly now. All those little cruelties had been warnings. The missing letters, the ruined job chances, the way they'd talked down to me in front of others, it had all been steps toward the same goal. The poisoning wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It was just the final move in something they had been planning for years. When I was released from the hospital, I didn't go home. I couldn't. The thought of stepping back into my parents' house made my stomach twist. Instead, I packed a small bag and moved in with Jamie, my college roommate. She didn't ask many questions. She just cleared space in her apartment and told me to rest as long as I needed. For a while, that's all I did: sleep, eat little meals, and try to get my strength back. I didn't tell Jamie the truth about what happened. I told her the doctors thought it might have been something in my drink at the party, maybe an accident. I kept the rest to myself. If I said it out loud, if I accused my parents without proof, it would sound unbelievable. So I kept my suspicions quiet and watched. When I felt strong enough, I started digging. At first, it was small things: old files, bank statements, papers they had left in boxes. I remembered where my parents kept their records, and I still had access to some accounts. Late at night, sitting at Jamie's kitchen table, I logged in and looked through the details. That's when I found it. A new entry in their financial records. A life insurance policy. Not on themselves, not on each other, but on me. The date was recent, only a few months before graduation. The policy listed them as the only beneficiary. If something happened to me, they would receive the payout. My hands shook as I read it over and over. It was clear, right there in black and white, but it wasn't the kind of thing I could take to the police. A policy by itself didn't prove they tried to kill me. It only showed they had a reason to want me gone. I sat for hours at the table, staring at the screen. I thought about the whispers I overheard outside the bathroom, about the bitter taste in my glass, about the way they rushed to act horrified at the hospital. All of it lined up. But still, it wasn't enough. That was the hardest part, knowing what they did but not being able to prove it. If I went to the police, my parents would deny everything. They would turn it around on me, make me look ungrateful, maybe even unstable. They had money, connections, a way of talking that made people believe them. I had none of that. So I knew I couldn't go straight at them. I would need to be careful. I would need to make them show themselves, to catch them in the act. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. Jamie was asleep in the next room, and I didn't want to wake her. I thought about every little thing my parents had done over the years, every time they tried to control me, every cruel comment, every opportunity they ruined. It had all led to this. My parents wanted me gone, but they also wanted it to look like I had done it to myself, or like it was some tragic accident. They wanted sympathy while collecting money off my life. The thought of it made my chest tighten, not with fear anymore, but with something else: anger. For the first time, I stopped feeling like their victim. I started thinking like someone who had to fight back. If I couldn't prove what they had already done, then I would need to set a trap. I would make them believe they had another chance. And this time, I would be ready. I called my parents a few weeks later, once I had the plan ready. My voice was soft, careful, the way they liked it. I told them I had good news. I said I'd been offered a job out of state, a position I couldn't turn down. I made sure to add that I wanted to celebrate with them before I left. Just a small family dinner, nothing big. There was a pause on the phone, then Mom's bright voice came through, too sweet to be real. "Oh, honey, of course. We'd love that." Dad's tone was slower, but he agreed right after. I could almost hear the satisfaction in their silence. They thought I was crawling back, eager to please, desperate for their approval. The night of the dinner, I dressed neatly, nothing flashy. I wanted them to see me as the obedient daughter they thought they could control. I smiled at the door when they arrived, hugged them warmly, and told them how much I'd missed them. It felt strange, acting so kind, but I had to sell it. Every word I spoke was planned, every glance practiced. We sat at the table together. I had cooked simple dishes, things they liked, nothing that would raise suspicion. I poured wine into glasses, filling mine last. What they didn't know was that before they arrived, I had added something special to my drink. It wasn't poison. It wasn't dangerous at all. It was a strong herbal liquid I'd bought at a small shop downtown, something bitter with a sharp smell that only came out when it was warmed. I swirled the glass in my hand, letting them watch. Mom leaned across the table, asking me about the new job, her voice full of fake pride. I told her everything I'd invented, the city, the company, the opportunities. I laughed lightly, apologizing for being so distant before, saying I wanted to make things right before leaving. Dad nodded, pretending to be proud, but his eyes never left my glass. I caught the quick flicker of interest when I set it down near the edge of the table. The dinner went on, filled with shallow conversation. I complimented them, told stories, even joked about how I would miss Sunday dinners. All the while, I kept sipping slowly, letting the smell from the herbs drift faintly whenever the liquid warmed in my hand. I wanted them to notice, to wonder, to think about trying again. At one point, I excused myself to grab dessert from the kitchen. I left my glass behind, half full, right where they could reach it. As I walked away, I could feel their eyes on me. My heart raced, but my face stayed calm. I carried the plates back slowly, giving them enough time. When I returned, both of them were sitting a little too stiffly, hands folded, faces too casual. My glass hadn't moved, not that I could see, but the tension in the air told me enough. They were waiting, watching, wondering if I would notice anything. I lifted the glass again, pretending not to see their eyes follow the movement. I smiled, chatting about how nervous I was to move so far away, how I hoped I'd make them proud. Then I took a sip, steady and smooth. The taste was sharp, bitter, exactly how I expected it to be. But the important part wasn't the flavor. The important part was the way their faces flickered, just for a second, with the same quiet calculation I had seen at the graduation party. That tiny look told me my trap was working. Dinner was almost over when I made my move. I put my glass of wine down close to my dad's arm, then stood up. "I'll grab the sauce," I said, acting casual. I walked to the kitchen, but I didn't really go for the sauce. I pulled out my phone and set it on the counter, camera facing the dining room. The door was open just enough to catch the table. My hands shook a little, but I kept my face calm. From the kitchen I heard my dad's voice, low and quick. "Now," Mom answered. "Hurry before she comes back." I froze. Then I heard the soft sound of liquid being poured. When I checked the screen, the camera showed my dad holding a small bottle and tipping it into my glass. Mom leaned close, whispering for him not to add too much. He put the bottle back in his pocket, sat up straight, and smiled like nothing had happened. I let the video run, then picked up my phone and walked back into the dining room. My parents looked up, smiling, pretending everything was normal. I sat down, placed the phone on the table, and pushed some food around my plate while my heart raced. Finally, I said, "I want to show you something." I turned the phone so they could see the screen. The video played, clear as day, Dad pouring the liquid into my drink, Mom whispering beside him. For a second, nobody spoke. My mom's face went pale. My dad's hand froze around his fork. "What is this?" Mom asked, forcing a laugh. "You're twisting things. That's not what it looks like." I leaned forward. "It looks exactly like what it is. You tried again. And this time I caught you." Dad shook his head, trying to sound calm. "Rachel, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You're both on camera. Your voices, your faces. And this video isn't just on my phone. I've already saved copies somewhere safe." They stared at me, silent now. The video looped again, filling the room with their own words. For the first time in my life, I watched them sit there without control. No excuses, no sweet smiles to cover the truth. Just fear. The silence after I showed the video didn't last long. My mom was the first to speak. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. "This is fake. You edited it. You're trying to ruin us." My dad followed quickly. "You're confused, Rachel. You've been under a lot of stress. People will see right through this." I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at them and said, "Copies of this video are already sent out. Even if you grab my phone, it won't matter. Other people have it now." The words landed hard. I could see it in their faces. My mom's mouth opened and closed like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out at first. Then she started yelling, accusing me of betraying my family. My dad slammed his hand on the table and said I was ungrateful, that after everything they'd done for me, I was trying to shame them. I didn't answer right away. I let them rant. The noise drew people from the other room. My aunt, 2 cousins, even one of Dad's business partners who had dropped by earlier. They stood in the doorway, watching with wide eyes as the shouting grew louder. Mom turned to them, pointing at me. "She's lying. She's trying to destroy us." But I kept my calm. I held up the phone again, pressed play, and let everyone watch. The footage was clear. Dad's hand, the small bottle, Mom's whisper. It played out in front of the whole room. Gasps filled the silence that followed. My aunt put her hand over her mouth. One cousin whispered something under her breath. Dad's business partner shook his head slowly, stepping back toward the door as though he didn't want to be there anymore. Mom shouted again, louder this time, trying to cover up the video with her voice. She accused me of turning people against them, of being dramatic, of making things up. My dad joined in, his face red, his voice booming so loudly it carried beyond the house. Through the window, I noticed neighbors pausing outside. A couple of them slowed their walk, curious about the yelling coming from inside. Our family had always cared about appearances, about looking perfect to the outside world. Now, anyone passing by could hear the fight tearing that image apart. I didn't shout back. I didn't need to. Their anger, their panic, their words were doing the damage for me. I just sat still, letting them unravel. Finally, when the noise had reached its peak, I pushed my chair back and stood. The room went quiet for a moment, as though everyone was waiting for what I'd do next. I looked at my parents, both of them red-faced and trembling, and said simply, "I don't need to argue. Everyone's seen enough." Then I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Nobody stopped me. My cousins stepped aside, my aunt avoided my eyes, and the neighbors outside pretended not to stare as I stepped out into the night. The air was cool, quiet compared to the storm inside. Behind me, the shouting started again, muffled by the walls. But it didn't matter anymore. Their performance was over. As I walked down the street, I didn't feel weak or scared like before. I knew the truth was out. Their friends, their family, their neighbors. Everyone would hear what happened. The reputation they worked so hard to protect was gone, and I didn't even have to raise my voice. I stayed quiet for a few days after the dinner. My parents tried calling me, leaving angry messages, but I didn't answer. I was tired of hearing their voices. Instead, I focused on the video I had saved. I watched it over and over, making sure it was clear. Then one night, sitting alone in Jamie's apartment, I uploaded it. I didn't use my name. I didn't even show my face. I just posted the clip with one short caption. When your parents call you a leech and try to make it permanent. At first, it was just a few likes, a few comments. People thought it was shocking. Some even thought it was fake. But then it spread. One person shared it, then another, and soon the numbers grew fast. By the next morning, it was everywhere in town. The comments were endless. Strangers debated what should happen. Some said it was unbelievable. Others said it was the clearest thing they'd ever seen. Everyone agreed the voices in the video sounded real, too real to deny. By the end of the week, almost everyone I knew had seen it. Friends from school sent me screenshots. People from my old neighborhood whispered about it. And the focus wasn't on me, it was on them. My parents. Their friends stopped coming around. People who once praised them for being such a respectable couple now avoided them. My dad's business, which relied on trust, started losing clients. Deals were canceled. Partners backed out quietly, not wanting to be associated with him. My mom faced her own fall. She had always loved her role on a local charity board, where she got to smile for pictures and act like a saint. But after the video spread, they asked her to step down. Too much bad press, too many questions. She tried to fight it, but her reputation was already broken. Everywhere they went, people stared. Some whispered, some just turned away. They couldn't escape it. For years, they had cared about looking perfect, about being admired. Now that image was gone. I didn't have to add anything more. The video spoke for itself. I never admitted it was me who posted it, but most people probably guessed. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't need to explain or defend myself. The world had already judged them. The strange thing was, I didn't feel joy watching it all happen. Not exactly. It was more like relief. Relief that the truth wasn't just in my head anymore. People saw them for who they really were. I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of their cruelty. Days turned into weeks, and the story spread further. Even people who didn't know us shared it online, making their own comments and guesses. My parents couldn't control it, no matter how much they denied or shouted. The more they tried to defend themselves, the guiltier they looked. For once, I didn't feel powerless. I didn't have to beg anyone to believe me. The proof was right there for everyone to see, and no amount of excuses could erase it. Their world, the one they built so carefully, was falling apart piece by piece. And all I had to do was press upload. Months passed before things finally settled. My parents still tried to reach me, but I never spoke to them again. With the video as proof of what they had done, I was able to get a restraining order. It felt strange seeing it written out on official papers. My own parents ordered to stay away from me, but also freeing. For the first time, I knew they couldn't touch me. The video didn't just ruin their reputation. It gave me something too. People who saw it began sending me messages. Strangers saying they believed me and wanted me to stay safe. Someone suggested I start a fundraiser to help me move far away. I wasn't sure at first, but I tried. I wrote a short post about needing a new start. The same way the video had spread, the fundraiser spread too. Slowly, the donations added up until I had enough to make real plans. By the end of summer, I packed my things and left. Jamie helped me load the car. I drove cross-country to a city where no one knew my parents' names, where I could finally build something on my own. I found a small apartment and started working at a company that had offered me a job right after graduation. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My life was finally mine. The first year on my own wasn't easy. I had to adjust, make new friends, and trust that the past wouldn't follow me. But each day, I grew a little stronger. Each paycheck I earned for myself felt like proof that their control was over. When the anniversary of my graduation came, I thought about everything that had happened. The party, the drink, the hospital, the fight at the dinner table. It all felt like another lifetime. I wanted to close that chapter once and for all, but on my terms. So, I asked a coworker to snap a picture of me at the office. I stood with my new team, smiling, a champagne flute in my hand. I wasn't pretending this time. I wasn't faking happiness for appearances. I really was happy, surrounded by people who valued me. I sent that single photo to my parents' phones with a short message. Still here. Still thriving. Not yours anymore. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. The picture and words said everything. I closed my phone, lifted my glass, and turned back to my coworkers. The laughter around me was real, and for the first time, I felt free. What about you? If you were in Rachel's place, would you have gone no contact and built a new life? Or would you have tried to forgive your parents after everything they did? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll always catch the next upload.